Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. In this lesson, we're continuing off of our previous lesson and continuing coverage of the Clause 1 to Clause 2 grammar pattern, which roughly translates to if, when, or whenever Clause 1, Clause 2. And in this lesson, what we're going to do, as I mentioned in the previous lesson, is that we're going to now cover the second main version of this grammar pattern, which is, again, the non-past version. And this is going to in turn break down into its own version, so we need to cover each of those too. So just a quick recap of this grammar pattern in general, in case you're watching this video before watching the previous one. For whatever reason, this grammar pattern is going to consist of two clauses, and it's going to be the second clause that determines the whole tense of the whole sentence. So if the second clause is in its past tense form, that means clause 1 is also in its past tense form, and the whole sentence is in turn in its past tense form. We covered the past tense form in the previous video, like I said, so check that out first. Which you definitely should. Right now, we're going to cover the case where the second clause is in the non-past tense form, which in turn means that the clause 1 is going to be in the non-past as well, and so the whole sentence is going to be in the non-past form. However, no matter which one you use, non-past or past, important thing to note here is that clause 1 will always be in its dictionary form or its negative knife form. There's just no other form that we can use for this grammar pattern, and there's not really a need for any other one, because since the second clause determines the tense of the clause 1 as well, we wouldn't need to conjugate it into the past tense form. If we want it in the past, we just make clause 2 in the past, and they're both in the past in that case. Okay, so now let's delve specifically into the non-past versions of this grammar pattern. And for the most part, since these aren't going to be past tense clauses, what they're going to represent more so is non-specific hypothetical occurrences. So we have two lesser versions of this non-past version of the grammar pattern. For the first one, the relationship that we're going to express between clause 1 and clause 2 is that just basically clause 2 is a natural result of clause 1. And so what this version will translate to is something along the lines of if clause 1, clause 2, or maybe clause 1 and clause 2 will naturally follow. So now let's just go through two examples to get a better idea of this. For our first line, we have Sugi no kado o hidari ni magaru to benjo ga aru yo. And what this line will translate to is basically something along the lines of if you make a left at the next corner, there should be a toilet there. Or make a left at the next corner and there'll be a toilet. Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have Sugi no kado, and kado is going to mean corner here, and Sugi is going to mean next. So if we're using the noun of a noun modification here, Sugi no kado is just going to be basically the next corner. We have the particle o marking this as the direct object. Then we have hidari ni, and hidari is going to mean left. And then we have ni basically marking hidari as the direction. Then after that, we have the verb magaru, which means to turn. So altogether, this first clause is going to translate to turn left at the next corner. And then the particle to here, which is required of the grammar pattern, will basically translate to and. Then we move on to the second clause, and we have benjo ga aru, and benjo is just going to mean toilet, basically. Then we have ga aru to mark an existence, so there will be a toilet. And so the key things to notice for the grammar pattern here, the second clause, it's in its non-past tense, and so the first clause will also be in the non-past. So this is all kind of a hypothetical sentence. If you turn left at the next corner, there will be a toilet. And also note the nuance of this version in particular. Like we said, clause 2 is going to be expressed as basically just being a natural result of clause 1. And so the speaker of the sentence here, he probably knows the territory pretty well, so he knows that if you make a left at the next corner, there should naturally be a toilet there, because I've been there before, I've seen it there, I've turned left at that corner before, there was a freaking toilet there. And so yeah, this is phrased as basically a hypothetical. If you make a left at the next corner, there should be a toilet. But again, notice how we can use that very general word and to generally mean the same thing, but less specific of the conditional condition. Make a left at the next corner and there will be a toilet, and if you make a left at the corner, there should be a toilet, are basically saying the same thing. For our next example sentence for this version of the grammar pattern, we have kogi o kikanai to shiken ni ochimasu yo. And what this line is translating to is just basically if you don't listen to the lecture, you're going to fail the test. Or maybe if we don't want to use the word if and we use and instead, we can just say don't listen to the lecture and you'll fail the test. Here we can see the relationship in which clause 2 is a natural result of clause 1. If you don't pay attention to the lecture, you won't get to know any of the information that will be on the test, and naturally you're going to fail the test basically. You're not going to do well. In the realm of students, this should definitely be considered a natural or a logical relationship. So with that said, let's just break down this sentence bit by bit to get a further idea of that. First up, we have the word kogi, which is going to be the word for lecture basically. We have the direct object particle o to mark kogi as the direct object of the verb that's about to come, which is going to be the verb kiku, which means to listen, to hear basically, so to listen to the lecture. but kiku is going to be in its negative nai form. We're actually using the negative nai form for once. It's going to be the dictionary form and the negative nai form that can be used with clause 1 and no other such form. So now we've covered both of them. And so with kikanai, we can now connect this first clause with the second clause with the particle to as the grammar pattern demands. And now we move on to the second clause. And it's just going to be the simple phrasing, shiken ni ochimasu yo. And shiken is going to be the word for test. You have the verb ochiru, which has a lot of definitions, but in this context, it's going to mean to fail, and it's going to be specific to a test. And when we're using ochiru with the word test, we're going to mark test with a ni instead of an o. So shiken ni ochiru is going to mean to fail test, and we're going to conjugate ochiru into ochimasu to be polite. Then we add the sentence ending particle yo because we want that nuance. And so again, notice that clause 2 is in its non-past tense. So clause 1 is also going to represent something in the non-past. And so altogether, the sentence is kind of hypothetical. If you don't listen to the lecture, you're going to fail the test. Or don't listen to the lecture and you'll fail the test. Basically, a hypothetical statement expressing a logical and or natural relationship of clause 1 leading to clause 2. Okay, so now we're going to cover the second version of the non-past version of this grammar pattern. And it's quite similar to the first version in that it expresses clause 2 being a result of clause 1. But this time around, it's not going to be so much natural or logical as it is going to be habitual. And so what that might translate to is something along the lines of whenever clause 1, clause 2. So now let's just jump into two examples for this version. So for our first example sentence for this version, we have the line gyunu o nomu to onaka ga itai desu. And what this line is going to translate to is just basically whenever I drink milk, my stomach hurts. So here we can notice how this is a habitual. Whenever you do the action of drinking milk, your stomach hurts. But it's not a logical or natural reaction because you wouldn't be able to look at just anybody and say, hey, if you drink milk, your stomach's gonna hurt. It pretty much has to depend on the particular person. And of course, also noteworthy here is how the second clause is, as always, something that's not controllable by the speaker of the sentence. This person cannot control his stomach becoming painful when he drinks milk. So now let's just break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have gyunyu, and this is going to be the word for milk. We have o marking as the direct object, and we have the simple verb nomu, which means to drink. It's going to be its dictionary form. Now let's just move on. We have the particle to as the grammar pattern demands. Then we move on to the second clause, and we have onaka ga itai desu. And onaka is going to be stomach. We have ga marking as the subject, and we have itai, which means painful, hurts. Then we have desu to end the sentence. Second clause is in its non-past tense, so of course this first clause is also going to represent something in the non-past tense. So altogether, the whole sentence is referring to an occurrence that is pretty non-specific, as in this isn't referring to an actual instance in which the speaker of the sentence actually drank milk and his stomach started hurting. This is just saying, whenever I drink milk, my stomach hurts. It's in the same vein of being hypothetical or conditional. So once again, gyunyu o nomu to onaka ga itai desu is going to be whenever I drink milk, my stomach hurts. For our next example sentence for this version, we have the line kimatsu shiken ni naru to sugoku shinpai suru. And what this line is going to translate to is just basically, whenever final exam season comes around, I get super worried. Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have kimatsu shiken. And here, kimatsu is just going to mean end of the term, basically, and shiken means test. So end of the term test more naturally translates to, in English, finals. We have the particle ni to mark kind of a direction. Then we have the verb naru to become. So basically what this first clause is just saying is whenever it becomes final season. We have the particle to connect it with the second clause, and the second clause is just sugoku shinpai suru. So first up we have the word sugoku, which is going to be the adverb that just means basically very or really or a lot. Then we have the verbal noun shinpai suru, which is going to basically just mean to worry, and we're just going to leave it in its dictionary form because we're being casual here and that's all we really have. So sugoku shinpai suru is worry a lot. So altogether again, kimatsu shiken ni naru to sugoku shinpai suru is whenever final season comes around, I get super worried. Again, notice that clause 2, non-past tense. So clause 1 is also in the non-past tense. Altogether, they're referring to something that is non-specific. It's not like the speaker is trying to say that tomorrow is final season and I'm getting super worried or anything. He or she is just saying that when it does in fact become final season, I will inevitably become worried. And of course, also notice how the act itself of becoming worried is something that the speaker cannot control. I'm pretty sure anybody would prefer not to become worried, and if he or she could control it, then he or she would make it that that's not the case. And so there we go. Those two examples that we just covered are representing the habitual result that is clause 2 of clause 1. And we can see how it differs from the first version that we covered in this lesson, because that one just represents a logical or natural result that is kind of universal. In this case, it's specific and particular. And so with that, we've covered the two versions of the non-past version of this grammar pattern, clause 1 to clause 2. And in turn, which means we've completed coverage of the grammar pattern in its totality. So now we should know how to use clause 1 to clause 2. We should know how to interpret it. Okay, maybe not completely know. We just need some more practice before we get a natural grip of it, because there are basically 5 different meanings it can carry depending on the context of the sentence. So it is, like I said in the previous lesson that first started the coverage of this grammar pattern, it is one of the most commonly used but also one of the most tricky grammar patterns to get a handle of. But with enough exposure, it should become natural. So yeah,